Denise rubbed her tired eyes as she made her way through the dimmed corridors of the Talon's Edge, the Rexian warship that had become her home 6 months ago. Being the only human aboard a vessel crewed by reptilian warriors twice her size had its challenges, but she'd earned their respect through her work in engineering. Humans, it turned out, had an uncanny ability to fix things that shouldn't work, a talent the Vrexians valued highly. She found him huddled in the cargo bay again. The Vrexian cub couldn't have been more than 5 cycles old, his scales still soft and iridescent. His name was Crix, and he'd been orphaned when his father fell in the Battle of Epsilon Reach. The crew had taken him aboard, but warriors didn't know what to do with younglings. They fed him, gave him a bunk, but that was where their parenting instincts ended. "Hey there, little guy," Denise said softly, crouching down. The cub's golden eyes reflected the cargo bay's emergency lighting. "Can't sleep again?" Crix made a small chirping sound, the Vrexian equivalent of a whimper. Without thinking, Denise scooped him up. He was heavier than a human child would be, but she managed. His body trembled slightly against her chest. "Come on, let's get you somewhere warm." She carried him back to her quarters, the smallest on the ship but cozy by her standards. She'd decorated it with what little she had, a photo of Earth, some jury-rigged fairy lights, and a blanket her mother had made. Denise set Crix down on her bunk and wrapped the blanket around him. "My mom used to do this for me," she said, sitting beside him. "When I couldn't sleep, she'd tell me stories." Crix tilted his head, curious. Denise smiled. "Want to hear one?" Over the next hour, she told him about Earth, about oceans and forests, about dogs and cats, about how humans used to look up at the stars and dream of ships like this one. Crix listened with rapt attention, his trembling slowly subsiding. Eventually, his eyes began to droop. "Sleep now," Denise whispered, gently stroking the ridges on his head. "You're safe here." The cub's breathing deepened, and soon he was asleep. Denise watched him for a moment, something warm and protective blooming in her chest. She hadn't realized how much she'd missed this, caring for someone, being needed. From that night on, Crix became her shadow. He'd wait outside engineering during her shifts, bringing her water rations she hadn't asked for. She'd teach him human phrases, and he'd try them out on the crew with mixed results. When nightmares woke him, he'd pad down to her quarters, and she'd tell him more stories about Earth until he fell back asleep. The crew noticed, of course. Vrexians missed nothing. "The human has claimed the cub," Commander Raxith observed one day, his tail swishing thoughtfully. "She has the nurturing instinct," another warrior replied. "I've heard humans evolved it strongly. Something about extended juvenile development periods." "Whatever the reason," Raxith said, watching as Denise patiently showed Crix how to properly calibrate a plasma coil. "The cub thrives. He hasn't had a fear spiral in weeks." What Denise didn't know was that Crix had been talking, in the barracks, in the mess hall, to anyone who would listen. He told them about Denise's mom, how she fixed his nightmares, how she made him laugh, how she always knew when he was sad even before he did. "Denise's mom says humans have something called hugs," Crix explained to a group of bemused warriors. "It's like a compression greeting, but it makes you feel better inside." The warriors exchanged glances. Vrexians didn't hug, but they'd all noticed the change in the cub and in their human engineer. 3 months later, the Talon's Edge engaged a Krillian raider fleet. The battle was fierce. Denise worked frantically in engineering, rerouting power, patching hull breaches, keeping the ship alive through sheer determination and human stubbornness. When a plasma conduit exploded near her station, she threw herself over Crix, who'd been helping her, shielding him with her body. The burns weren't severe, but they hurt like hell. When the battle ended and the medics arrived, they found Denise still covering Crix, who was crying and trying to pull her toward the medical bay.
"Denise's mom is hurt."
"Help Denise's mom!" Commander Raxith arrived as they were treating her burns. "You could have been killed," he said gruffly. "He's a kid," Denise replied, wincing as the medic applied regenerative gel. "What else was I supposed to do?" Raxith's eyes, all 3 of them, studied her carefully. "You are unusual, Denise human." "Yeah, well," she managed a weak smile. "We're a weird species." The commander's tail twitched in what might have been amusement. "Rest, that is an order. The cub will remain with you. He refuses to leave anyway." Denise woke 12 hours later in the medical bay, her burns mostly healed. Something felt different. The room was too quiet. She sat up slowly and immediately froze. The entire senior crew stood at attention outside the medical bay's transparent wall. All of them. Commander Raxith, the bridge officers, the warrior squad leaders, even the grizzled chief engineer who usually avoided everyone. And Bruce, the ship's tactical officer and the only crew member close to her age, stood at the front, holding something. The door slid open. They entered in formation, which would have been intimidating if not for the fact that they all looked awkward. Denise said eloquently. What's happening? Commander Raxith stepped forward. Crix has spoken much of Denise, Mom. We did not understand this human concept at first. But we understand now. You have done what we could not, given him what he needed to heal. Bruce approached, offering what he held. A Vrexian family medallion, intricately carved. In our culture, he said, his translator rendering his words in both their languages, this signifies adoption. The crew has voted unanimously. Denise's throat tightened. I don't. You have shown us something we'd forgotten, Raxith continued. That strength isn't just in battle. The crew would be honored if you would accept guardianship of Crix, officially. Tears pricked Denise's eyes. She looked past them to where Crix stood in the doorway, his scales shimmering with emotion. Yes, she whispered. Of course, yes. Crix bolted forward, throwing himself into her arms. The crew made approving rumbles, the Vrexian equivalent of applause. As Denise held her son, because that's what he was now, Bruce leaned in with a grin. Fair warning, half the junior crew has started calling you Mom too. Denise laughed through her tears. Seriously? Apparently you fixed Ensign Threx's console and made him soup when he was sick last week. You're doomed, and she was. Over the following weeks, more crew members started seeking her out, not just for repairs but for advice, comfort, or sometimes just company. Her quarters became an unofficial gathering space. She taught them human games, shared Earth foods she synthesized in the galley, and listened to their problems. The lonely human engineer had become the heart of the warship. One evening, as Denise tucked Crix into bed, he'd moved into her quarters permanently. He looked up at her with those golden eyes. Denise, Mom? Yeah, kiddo? Thank you for choosing me. She kissed his forehead gently. Thank you for choosing me right back. As she dimmed the lights, Denise realized something profound. She'd come to the stars looking for adventure, for purpose. Instead, she'd found something better. She'd found family and maybe. She thought as she heard Bruce and several others arguing good-naturedly outside her door about whose turn it was to have dinner with her. That was the most human thing of all, turning strangers into loved ones, one act of kindness at a time. Outside, the stars streamed past the Talon's edge as it continued its patrol. Inside, a human woman had reminded an entire warship what it meant to be more than warriors. They'd learned to be a family,